Welcome to ChargeCast. My name is Rob Patel, your student body president for UA Huntsville. Sitting next to me is Dr. Altenkirch, our new president for UA Huntsville that just started in November of 2011. So, before we start with the hard-hitting questions, the first question everybody's asking is, are you an Alabama or Auburn fan?
I must be an Alabama fan.
So, another question is how we're known to have our undefeated team, our Division I undefeated football team. When could we capitalize on that?
I know I saw a T-shirt in the bookstore that said UAH football still undefeated.
Yeah.
Not likely soon.
Yeah.
As I told you, I would take a look at what it costs to start a football team.
Mm-hmm.
Probably talking about a 50% increase in athletic expenditures.
Oh wow.
Which would be debt service on a stadium,
Mm-hmm.
plus operating expenses based on what I've seen other institutions of this size and character spending on football.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd have to generate revenue commensurate with that to make it be a good business model.
Wow.
And that's not likely.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So, if you could, now that we got all the important questions out of the way,
right.
If you'd like to just tell us a little about yourself and where you came from and stuff.
Well, I came here from being president of New Jersey Institute of Technology in Newark, New Jersey for 9 years.
Mm-hmm.
And prior to that, I was a vice president for research at Mississippi State.
Oh.
You know, several things that have occurred since I've arrived. One, we took a look at the hockey program,
Mm-hmm.
and we made the collaborative decision with supporters associated with the hockey program over the years that we'll continue at Division I, and the key is to get in a conference, and we're working on that. And my assessment is if we're successful in getting in a conference, which I'm confident we will be, that will allow the program to sort of take off and come back to the levels that it was a number of years ago.
Oh, okay.
So we're going to continue hockey at the Division I level. We're committed to do that. Two, we moved the commencement to the Von Braun Center for a couple reasons. One, it allows for one commencement ceremony, which makes it a grander ceremony than 3 separate ones on campus. It also allows more people to attend, as many friends and relatives as you want, and it's just a more elegant experience for the graduate. Mm-hmm. It's also easier on the staff. They only got to be there once.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's less expensive.
Yeah.
Which is important. The other thing we did was took a look at the housing policy, which, and that's the policy that was put in place a few years ago that required all freshmen and sophomores to live on campus, mm-hmm. but then was relaxed a little bit through a waiver process. And we took a look at the impact of that, since a number of people around campus said that they didn't care for that policy. And the impact is probably not what would be desired. So we're going to revert to the previous policy, which basically says if you're within a 30-mile radius, mm-hmm. living at home, and you don't want to stay on campus, that's your prerogative.
Yeah.
I would encourage students to do it for the reasons I said earlier. Mm-hmm. But another thing we're doing is basically to run a housing experiment. We're going to set aside a number of rooms, I think something on the order of 50, maybe it's 50 beds, where a student within that 30-mile radius can stay on campus for, I think it's a 6-week period at a reduced housing rate, and after 6 weeks decide if they want to stay, mm-hmm. or go back home and commute.
Oh, okay.
And the concept there is that if you provide the experience and the student learns about it, they may be more inclined to choose to stay on campus. Whereas if they didn't have the experience and didn't know what it was about, they might choose not to.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's good. I think it's good for prospective. I think it's good for students. I think it's good for recruiting prospective students. It's also good for the institution to get more occupancy.
Oh,
So we haven't figured out a downside of it yet.
okay. Yeah. Many students don't understand like what the day-to-day activities or the duties of a president of a UA Huntsville should be. So could you just go about what you usually have to do?
Some presidents don't understand it. You know, it's overseeing all aspects of the institution, from enrollment management, academic programming, personnel management, research leadership, private fundraising, community and alumni relations. So it's overall it's an institutional cheerleader,
Yeah.
to help people orient themselves toward meeting goals of the institution.
Mm-hmm. So whenever you started up here, were there any things that from then till now, were there some things that you wanted to implement as soon as you got in, or some things that you wanted to look into more of?
Well, I would say three short-term goals are to grow enrollment, which a couple aspects of that. One is to populate the academic programs that we have effectively, which generates additional tuition revenue. Because we only get about 22% of our funding from the state. If you subtract out the research funding, which is pretty much dedicated to research, we get 35% of the money from the state. So that's 35% of what we use to run the educational program. So tuition is accounting for 65%. So that's the majority revenue stream. And so if we can grow that revenue stream while holding fixed costs as steady as we can, we can work to put that money into quality improvements. So enrollment growth is important. And part of that resource management is to put in place an integrated advancement effort which encompasses fundraising, communications, alumni relations, and fundraising. That's a long-term effort, but a short-term goal of putting the structure in place. And then the other kind of short-term goal is to have the academic units more integrated with the research units, so that we can leverage the expertise of the tenured and tenure-track faculty and get them more heavily involved in research.
Okay. You kind of talked about your short-term goals and plans. What are some of your, have you decided on some of your long-term plans or goals that you've looked at?
Well, as you know, since you're involved in it, we're sort of developing a plan that will encompass those long-term goals. But ultimately, if you want to talk about an overarching long-term goal, that is to be a nationally and internationally recognized research institution that's technologically focused. And so when people hear UAH or UA Huntsville, they think, yeah, that's a place where I would go to find out if I wanted to know something about XYZ. And when you get to that point, then I think you've reached the stature.
Oh, okay. What are some universities that you may be looking at to kind of base our what we're trying to get to at?
Well, I think for an institution like this one, Georgia Tech would be sort of the aspirational peer. Other institutions are a little bit different. Perhaps Carnegie Mellon, although it's private, which is very technologically focused, but yet has a broad educational component in the arts, the humanities. Those are probably two that I'd pick up as ones I'd take a look at.
Okay. Whenever you're talking about enrollment growth and growing the university, would you like to see us growing more in a traditional campus or more of a community campus?
Well, I think ultimately institutions of this character need to grow as residential campuses. You know, if you try to compete, for example, in areas like distance education, you know, there are people that focus on that. But this is more of a residential campus where, you know, students get a broad experience of not only academics and participating in research, but also social activities, interactions with people. They learn different cultures, how to interact, how to work on a team. And that's best done being immersed in a living environment on campus.
Is this the campus that you'll probably see yourself retiring after a couple of years, or after some amount of years?
I have no idea.
I don't think anybody ever does. But the second most important question we have is, what is an interesting fact about yourself? We didn't put this question on the script, so it was kind of you just have to wing it now.
I played a year of baseball at Purdue.
Oh, really?
Never having played high school baseball.
Oh, wow. What position was that?
Played right field, and I was a leadoff hitter.
Oh, wow.
For the freshman baseball team.
Oh, wow, that's pretty cool.
I ran high school track against a fellow who ultimately broke the world's record in the 100-yard dash.
Wow, really?
Yeah, I didn't beat him.
Wow.
I do a lot of cooking.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. And a lot of those things that you've heard were on the President's website. And could you tell us a little bit about how to get to the President's website from the UH website?
Well, there are several ways to do it. If you obviously, if you just go put in a president in the search box, it'll pop up on a list. If you go to faculty and staff, there'll be an office of the president. You click on that, and then within that presidential website is a number of links. Every time there is a message or announcement sent out, it's posted on the web. There's a strategic planning process going on. Every time there's a discussion, a meeting about strategic planning, that's posted on the web. So it's sort of a running chronology of announcements, messages, events that happen, etc., that are organized by the President's office.
Okay.
So if you want to keep up, see what's happening on campus, that's a good place to start.
Okay. So, is there any other last thing that you'd like to say before we end out today?
No, other than this is a great place. I wouldn't have come here.
Yeah.
But you know, we're going to move it forward and take it to a new level.
That sounds great.
With your help.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Altenkirch, for your time.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you guys for watching. Please stay tuned for next episodes of ChargeCast.